Hello, I'm Tomas Gabor, Managing Director of Sysco Environmental. For over 20 years, I've been investigating mold, damp and indoor air quality problems in homes, workspaces and public buildings across the UK. In our previous episodes, I showed you how industrial hygienists investigate mold. We looked at moisture measurements, thermal imaging, ventilation and building inspections. Today, I'd like to answer another question that we hear almost every day. Do I actually need mold testing? It's a really interesting question because there isn't a simple yes or no answer. Some people believe every mold problem should be tested in a laboratory. Others think mold testing is a complete waste of money. In reality, both opinions can be wrong or right. When mold testing is used they can be both wrong when mold testing is used for the right reasons. It's an extremely valuable investigative tool. When it's used for the wrong reason, it often produces numbers that don't really answer the question you are asking. But before we go any further, it's worth explaining what we actually mean by mold testing. There isn't just one type of test, there are several. We can collect air samples, surface samples, bulk samples from building materials, swab samples, and in special situations, there are more advanced laboratory techniques available as well. Each method answers a different question. Choosing the right one depends entirely on what are you trying to find out. The most common method we use is called spore trap sampling. It's actually quite straightforward. A calibrated pump draws measured volume of air through a small collective cassette. As that air passes through, microscopic mold spores become trapped on a sticky collection surface. The cassette is then sent to a laboratory, and under the microscope, our analysts identify the different fungal spores, count them, and calculate how many spores are present in each cubic meter of air. That gives us an objective picture of the airborne fungal environment inside a building. One of the most important parts of this process, and something many people don't expect, is that we nearly always collect an outdoor sample as well. People sometimes ask, why do you need sample outside when the problem is indoors? Well, the answer is simple. Because mold is naturally present outdoors. The outdoor sample becomes our baseline. Without it, it's often impossible to know whether the indoor spore levels are completely normal or significantly elevated. In many cases, it's the comparison between indoor and outdoor air that is more important than the actual numbers themselves. So, when is mold testing genuinely useful? There are quite a few situations if we suspect hidden mold, perhaps behind the walls, under the flooring, or above ceiling tiles. Air sampling can provide valuable evidence. It's also useful following flooding or significant water damage. After mold remediation, to confirm that the work has been successful. During insurance investigations, property purchases, workplace complaints, or in sensitive environments such as hospital, care homes, schools, food production facilities. In situations like these, objective scientific evidence can be extremely valuable. Now, here's something that often surprises people. Visible mold doesn't always need laboratory testing. If mold is clearly growing across a wall, testing simply confirms something we already know. The mold is already visible. Instead, our priority is usually understanding why is it growing? Where is the moisture? What's causing it? How do we stop happening it again? Sometimes identifying the moisture source is far more valuable than identifying the mold species. People often ask me, what do the laboratory results actually mean? And that's where professional interpretation becomes incredibly important. Many people immediately look at the total number of spores. In reality, that's only one small part of the story. We are looking at the types of spore presence, whether moisture indicated molds are elevated, How do the indoor results compare with the outdoor sample? Whether the findings match what we observed during the building inspection, and whether the results are consistent with the moisture measurements and environmental conditions. Laboratory numbers never tell the whole story on their own. They are simply one piece of a much bigger investigation. Another technique we sometimes use is surface sampling. Instead of asking what's floating around in the air, surface sampling asks what exactly is growing on this material. Using adhesive tapes or sterile swab, we can collect mold directly from walls, ceilings, timbers, or furnishing. These samples help us identify the fungi present, but they still don't explain why the mold developed in the first place. That always comes back to moisture. I'll give you a good example. We were asked to investigate an office where staff had been complaining about persistent musty smell. There was no visible mold anywhere. The building looked perfectly clean. Without testing, there was very little to see. Air sampling identified elevated levels of aspergillus and penicillium compared to the outdoor sample. That prompted a much more detailed investigation. Eventually, a concealed plumbing leak was discovered above the suspended ceiling. The mold itself has been completely hidden. The air sampling didn't solve the problem, it simply pointed us towards where we needed to investigate next. Once the leak was repaired, the building dried out, and follow-up sampling confirmed the airborne spore levels have returned to normal. One of the biggest misconceptions we hear is this: mold testing tells you everything. Actually, it doesn't. Testing tells us what was present at that exact moment the sample was collected. It doesn't automatically identify the moisture source. It doesn't diagnose the building, and it certainly doesn't replace professional judgment. Good investigations combine laboratory evidence, building science, environmental measurements, and experience. That's how we reach reliable conclusions. So if there is one thing I'd like you to remember from today's episodes, it is this. Laboratory testing is an incredibly valuable tool, but it's only one part of a professional mold investigation. The real objective isn't simply identifying mold. It's understanding why it's growing, how people are being exposed, and how to prevent the problem from returning. That's what industrial hygiene is really about. In our next episodes, we'll move away from investigation and answer a practical question that many homeowner asks. Can you safely remove mold by yourself? Or is it time to call a professional? We'll discuss when a DIY cleaning is perfectly appropriate and when it isn't, and how to recognize the situations where professional help is the safest options. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in our next episode.